Hi, I am Nikki Soda, Membership Development Officer for NAATP, and we are here with William Robbins, the Executive Director of Alina Lodge, which is located in New Jersey. Hi, Bill. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are excited. Alina Lodge is a long-standing member. They were established in 1957. And Bill, do you mind telling us a little bit about Alina Lodge and the mission and how you guys came about?
Yeah, history is long. Our founder, Mrs. Delaney, ran Alina Lodge for many, many decades. And really the early foundation, kind of clinical foundation, has stood time. It's about giving our students, we call them students here because they're here to learn how to get sober. And so we've really, from Mrs. Delaney all the way up until now, we really have such an importance on the concept of time and how that helps our students get well. And so back in 1957, her period of time that people were in treatment was always a little bit longer than what other people were doing. So at that time, it was 6 weeks to 12 weeks back in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And then over the course of the years and decades, we've grown to really specialize with chronic relapsers, and most of our men and women have historically been here for about 9 or 12 months. One of the couple of the other hallmarks, I guess, that involved Mrs. Delaney, she believed in structured daily living, providing education, and really telling people the truth. And so that's one of the real clinical hallmarks in working with our men and women, is telling the truth to them, looking at the parts of self that they really need to work on in order to be sober and to get well. And so that part of the tradition, going back from the late 50s up until now, is still really prevalent. We want to tell people the truth, the families and the individuals that we work with. And so it's a pretty important hallmark for us in our clinical work with individuals and their families. And so that's part of the mission in helping people attain and maintain sobriety and recovery for both the individual and the families.
So you guys have launched a new website, and I understand that there's also some changes that have come about. Do you mind telling us a little bit about your new program?
Yeah, I would love to tell members what's going on at Alina. I think one of the beautiful parts of our reputation has been that we've always taken a long-term approach. We really believe in time as a healing mechanism. But we also took the last year to really look at ourselves and look at what's really working and what's not, and wanting to hold on to some of those core parts of how we work with students and their families from a long-term perspective, but also recognizing that sadly, one of the things that I learned is that more and more people waited to get to Alina, right? They would go to other treatment facilities and shorter treatment facilities that don't have as much efficacy as a long-term approach. And typically they wouldn't get to us till much further down, where they've been emotionally exhausted, financially exhausted, and/or with the opiate crisis, literally just not alive and not available to help. And so one of the things that we've recently launched, as you know, last month, we started a 90-day program. And the idea is to keep and hold some of the real components of our long-term program that relies on a lot of clinical work, but gives people more time than just a 28-day model. But it also allows us to assess with individuals coming into treatment and to offer people with less severe progression of their substance use disorder. So traditionally, most of our students here have very severe addictions, long histories, a lot of treatment, et cetera. And we want to keep that. But we also want to help people that are earlier on in their progression and give them a really, really, quality treatment experience, as opposed to what we think, again, just doesn't work with the same efficacy, which is the shorter term. Our men and women, we know this from our experience. Our men and women, it takes several months before there's any clarity in their thinking and their judgment and their decision making and their reasoning and all those kind of prefrontal cortex, parts of their brain that when you give them time, they begin to heal, they can take in the information and then have time to start to apply some of those changes that are really necessary to being sober men and women. In addition to our 90-day program, we've infused our long-term program with a ton of new clinical enhancements. And so that's the other exciting thing that's going on. And with students, that has as its foundation the 12 steps. We have incorporated EMDR training with our clinical staff. We have started an Enneagram group. We have mindfulness-based relapse prevention that we have started. Our eating disorder program is enhanced. We are developing a community integration group where the group is actually going to go off campus. So traditionally, our men and women stay on campus throughout treatment, and we bring services in. We're actually going to start doing some things off-site. And so there's a lot of robust, exciting clinical things going on, in addition to our grief and sex and relationship and anger and some of our special workshops, both trauma and intimacy workshops. So we're infusing a lot of what we're doing and still holding on to this old approach that says be upfront and honest with individuals, let them know what they need to change. We still believe very much that the individual needs to change, and so if they're going to be sober. And so we're really integrating a lot of modern clinical approaches with some of the old time things that we know works in keeping our long-term model, and then also having a 90-day offering.
Bill, what have some of the challenges been for you guys during this extremely challenging time during COVID? Have there been some large obstacles that have presented themselves to you? What would you say has been the biggest challenge?
I think the biggest challenge was, like every other place, I had an email. I went back and I looked at my first COVID email, and it was February 27th, and it was to my leadership team and a few members of the board. And I said something to the effect of, hey, I'm generally not an alarmist, but this thing looks like it's coming our way. And I'm starting to have a lot of questions about where we are with food and procedures and policies and what ifs. A week and a half later, not even probably 2 weeks later, we were closed. We shut everything down. So I think the ever-evolving nature of what seemed like it was going to be kind of an acute, kind of short-term, just intense, challenge has become a much longer chronic one. And so, like a lot of other organizations, we went into high gear. We had daily meetings. We were connected, thank goodness, already with our local county reps. We had been part of, meetings with them and throughout the years. And so we had our contacts at the state and the county. Our board was having weekly meetings with myself and leadership team to review policies and procedures. We communicated with families, and we basically shut down like a lot of other places. We were open to admissions, but It became a very precarious, undertaking to admit potentially, during that time. And so for 3 months, we really saw only a handful of admissions because we needed to protect the students that were here and the staff as well. And so we changed policies and procedures. There was one day in particular, we went late into the early evening, 7, 8 o'clock at night. And by the next day, the policies that we had just finished writing had changed because it was just that ever changing. So it was a challenge. We have the blessing of, our long-term approach has the blessing of being kind of remotely located. We're only about an hour and a half out of Manhattan, but we are out here on the western part of Jersey. And so the isolation really helped. So we were away from, New Jersey, New York, the tri-state area up here got hit pretty hard. We were away from the dense, nature of Manhattan and towards the city. And so we were lucky enough not to have any COVID cases come on campus, and we've essentially been able to isolate ourselves and continue to work with our students without much impact. We did have to shut down bringing outside meetings, speakers, etc. Our family program, sadly, has probably been the most affected in a negative way, in that we weren't able to have families come onto campus. One of the real positive things in really moving to a virtual platform is typically we would have families come in and visit typically once a month, a month and a half, 2 months, depending on where they lived across the nation. And so we've been able to have a weekly family virtual meeting every Sunday at 4 o'clock. And so in some ways, our families are able to participate on a weekly basis. So the helping of our families, it's different, but it's gotten stronger, I would say, because of COVID and needing to change to a virtual platform. So
that's a great benefit or a great positive to come out of it.
It is a silver lining. I mean,
Right.
it was challenging in so many different ways, but that has been one of the really nice things coming out of it. And the other piece is that we have over 2,000 alumni. We have a lot of people we've served over all the decades. And so we were able to have staff facilitate the 12-step meetings. And so we were able to put virtual meetings up twice a day. So for alumni in the recovering community that were just struggling with the disconnection, we were really able to be there and stay connected to them. So that was, again, a really nice piece that came out of all this.
Thank you so very much for your time, Bill. It's a wealth of information, and I encourage anyone to reach out, to look at the new website and see for yourself the phenomenal work that they do.